these firearms, these rifles, and everything else on this table was presented as political theater, where politics took over and surpassed the need to preserve evidence. Why do I say that? Well, I've been working with evidence all my life. And what we had was every one of the firearms are not bagged. They've been transported from somewhere without protection for fingerprints, without protection for DNA examination, forensic examination, and more important, without protecting them from cross-contamination for DNA examination. Because don't forget, they told us we're looking for a national network of terrorists in Canada. And if they were serious about that, they would have been examining each one of these exhibits for forensic evidence leading to who brought them, where they were, who had touched them, what fingerprints were on them. I mean, we're looking for a national terror network here, aren't we? No, we really weren't. So it was okay that the staged PR photo was far more important than professional evidence handling and an ongoing investigation. And that's exactly what we had. And so the investigation was compromised and suspect right from the start with no recordings. Look, the four decent guys, they've got 7 children between them, number of elderly parents, a couple of businesses, I think with 7 and 10 employees, award-winning landscaping business. 2 of them knew each other since childhood, I've been told, but the other 2 were unknown to each other and unknown to the pair who knew each other. So we're asked to believe that they were secret members of this Diagolon terrorist network, and that they met for the first time at the Coutts protest. And they were sitting there with their coffees. And one of them said, glad to meet you, Chris. I got an idea. Let's murder some police officers.
Yeah.
Let's do it here. I know it's a suicide attack and we're surrounded by 100 armed police officers, but let's do it. And the other guys would have said, I think that's a fine idea, Jerry. Let's murder these police officers. That's what they want us to believe. We used to have a saying in the police, if you've got nothing, charge conspiracy. Because conspiracy, the acts of one person, however innocent or guilty, can be used against the others in proving the common intent. So in other words, if there's a plot to murder someone and you supplied the car that was the getaway vehicle 2 weeks earlier, you're guilty of murder too. You're guilty of this conspiracy. They have to prove it, but it's a nice, easier charge. Excuse me. A much easier charge in some ways to arrest for. Proving it, that's another thing. So they're charged with conspiracy. There's a few other little charges there too. Not quite sure what they are, but they're very minor. I think someone is alleged. Oh yes, one of the guys is alleged to have had a pipe bomb. Ooh, back at his farm. Wow.
Yeah,
Wait a minute. Don't we use those for shoving them down gopher holes?
That's exactly it.
Isn't that exactly what it's used for? Sometimes we use propane.
Yes.
There's all sorts of techniques.
Tennis ball bombs. Yeah, I've seen all sorts of different things being used. Yeah.
And then we had 2 other pieces of evidence that I uncovered that are just brutal. One of the men was at the Coutts protest and he was arrested for threatening a police officer. That's another one of the charges. And once again, I wasn't in court when this evidence was heard, but someone told me he was there, and I believe it, that the police officer said that this accused said to him, I'm going to take your gun. Well, let me tell you something. If I'm a police officer and I'm armed, and somebody says to me, I'm going to take your gun,
They're
I
dead.
believe that person.
That's right.
And that's a threat. And I'll take him down.
Yeah.
I lost a friend shot through the heart with his own gun, Harry
Hmm.
Snedden,
Hmm.
September of 1978. So someone says to me, they're going to take my gun, they're done.
Hmm.
Except there was a video camera going, my friend. And he didn't say that. He said, wow, that's a nice gun. I wish I could afford one. Words to that effect.
Right.
But that's not what was testified to in court, so I understand. I stand to be corrected, but nobody's corrected me since, and that's what I believe happened. The other thing that happened was everybody's being followed, and all the phones are tapped. So one of the accused, he's 100 miles away, 200 miles away, and he gets a call that someone has a problem. They would like an electrical repair or installation in a farm. And he says, okay, I'll come and do it. And he puts his tools in his truck and he drives towards the farm. And thereafter, he's arrested, surrounded, handcuffed, the whole works. And they knew he was going to the farm. But when that press release came out from the RCMP said he was on his way back to Coutts. It was theater.
Yeah.
It was all theater.
So, yeah, I mean, all of this evidence is just, I mean, it's circumstantial at best, right? And I mean, it's coercion at the very worst, because we don't know what these undercover female officers said to these guys to try to get them to. I mean, I have to. I mean, I have to believe that the objective was clear when they went in there, that they had to get these guys to say something that would
Anything.
give Trudeau precedence to invoke the Emergencies Act, right? And so, myself, I was in BC at the time. I'm in Alberta now, during the Freedom Convoy, and I was a donor. I was writing at the time, and I had people reaching out to me. I'd spoken to people who were in Ottawa, and it seemed to me that during that protest, that it was pretty clear to operate well within the law. Don't do anything stupid. That was the message that was heard by, I think, most people. Now, in any large group of people, you get a few dummies. That's just going to happen, right? But in this case, this seemed like the first situation where we had, I mean, it was the largest ever civil rights movement in the history of our country, but it seemed like this was a rare scenario where everybody understood to operate well within the boundaries of the law. Now, I find it difficult to believe that these four men at the protest at Coutts border did not get that message nor understand what was at stake and how they were expected to behave.
Not only that, we're asked to believe far more than that, that they were planning a suicide mission. What would amount to a suicide
For
mission
what
to
purpose?
murder police officers? Well, to take over the government of Canada, of course.
In Alberta? Like that's crazy to me. You know what I
Don't
mean?
complicate things with evidence, okay, and
Right.
facts.
Right. But that's
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying, right? It's like, you know, so what and this is an argument I hear online a lot whenever the Freedom Convoy is brought up, that this was a attempted coup, that this, and to me it's like,
Ah,
when I hear that from people, I'm like, you clearly don't know history, because if you've ever seen a coup in your life, trust me when I tell you, this was not one. This was a
bouncy
bunch.
castles are not the armament. Thanks, Jason.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, you even take the bouncy castles and the street hockey out of the picture. This was a bunch of people fed up with being beaten and ground to a pulp by authoritarian mandates that we had lived under for 3 years, that made zero sense and that were clearly political in nature. That's what was happening here. Now, I would say, I don't know if anybody even knows how much of our country was in support of the Freedom Convoy, but at the time, I was in British Columbia, which is as far left as you can get in our country. It's basically Canada's California. And most of the people that I observed were supporters of the convoy, if not financially, in spirit. They were in spirit. So it was a
Yep.
civil rights movement that most of our country was behind. And Trudeau needed to invoke the Emergencies Act and needed to crush it because it was growing day by day by day by day. So they needed to get something on somebody that would allude to there being some sort of coup or some sort of insurrection on its way. And obviously that's what these four guys were set up for.